Greetings, friends, fellow citizens, and fellow patriots, and welcome to this Labor Day weekend edition of the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I am the host of this podcast, and I am the president of the We the People Convention organization, which provides the funding for this podcast and for our website and for our text messages and emails, which you should be getting, and you can sign up at wethepeopleconvention.org, and for our donations to the other conservative groups around the nation that make a big difference in our country and protecting and defending our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So Labor Day weekend, the holiday that has no purpose, founded in 1882, it played an important role in workers' rights in our country. There was a tremendous imbalance where, the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and things were, richer than nations, and working men and women didn't have a living wage. And that movement grew and brought some balance to our country. But today, only 9.9%, I checked this morning, of workers are in unions. And that's perhaps not a good thing. I know if you listen to this podcast, you may think I'm anti-union. We're not anti-union. We're anti-union corruption, right? We think there should be unions, but I just saw a story this week that the teachers' unions only spend like 5% of their money representing the teachers, and all the rest, 95% of what they extort from us through school property taxes, goes to fund leftist, Marxist, anti-American causes. That's what I'm against. And quite frankly, we have today a repeat of what we had in the late 1800s, 1900s of, the oligarchs, the Musks and the Bezos and the Zuckerbergs and all the billionaires. That's wrong. And that's a failure of our society. We failed on antitrust, and we really could use unions, but only unions that represent the rights of workers. And we don't have those. And it's a shame, but unfortunately, that's not what we're going to, celebrate on Labor Day. There's going to be, no talk about that on Labor Day. It's really the celebration of the start of the football season. And I'm sure this podcast is going to come out right as the Ohio State-Michigan football game is airing on national TV. And many of our folks in Ohio will put off the podcast till that's over. We'll see how that goes. It's going to be tough for the Buckeyes to defeat Texas twice in a row, but we'll hope for the best. But welcome to all of you who decide to join us this week. And I hope that you have a great Labor Day weekend, a 3-day holiday, to be with family and friends, to talk about American greatness and to talk about the good things that are happening, many of which will be talked about in this podcast, but also to talk about how the job is not done. And we have to destroy the forces that are trying to destroy our nation. And we'll talk about that in this podcast as well. So I left you last week, with a pretty tough, statement about Trump calling up National Guard in 19 states to prepare for what I believe we are in a hot civil war. That's on our website. You can see my take on that from a couple of podcasts ago. And that war has to be won. And you and I have to be part of fighting it. But boy, President Trump sure is part of fighting that. And we're going to get into that, right away here into the podcast, as so much is going on. So thank you for all you who are new, for the young people who are joining us from TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and the older people who are first discovering us. We've gotten our footprint bigger, but you are here to get a summary of the weekly news and some opinion on how that news affects your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and the very freedom of our nation and the future of our nation. And so I thank you for joining us. I think you'll be really pleased with the podcast we put together, and we're going to just get into that right now. So Let me start with this because I think this is very significant. Now even Dems admit Trump's crime crackdown is working. D.C. Mayor reverses course, admits Trump federal crime crackdown is working. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser initially expressed fear of President Trump's plan to crack down on crime in the nation's capital, but its clear success made her change her mind, and it's been a success. She says that here. After Trump announced his plans to deploy National Guard troops and assume oversight of the Metropolitan Police Department to tackle rising crime in Washington, D.C., Bowser warned that such a crackdown would be unsettling and unprecedented. Okay? However, the mayor admitted at a press conference on Wednesday that the federal surge has made a noticeable impact on one of America's most famously dangerous cities. After the briefing, Bowser displayed a chart crediting the influx of FBI, DEA, ATF, U.S. Park Police, and Capitol Police with bolstering the MPD's efforts and declared, "We greatly appreciate the surge of officers that enhanced what the MPD has been able to do in this city." She pointed to one demographic example, saying, for carjackings, the difference between this period, this 20-day period of this federal surge, and last year represents an 87% reduction in carjackings in Washington, D.C. We know that when carjackings go down, when use of guns go down, when homicide or robbery go down, neighborhoods feel safer and are safer. So this surge has been important to us for that reason. This is why we think in just a couple of weeks of experience has worked. Having more federal law enforcement officers on the street, we think having more stops that got to illegal guns has helped. We think that is more accountability in the system, or at least perceived accountability in the system, that is driving down illegal behavior. And we think this has been a good thing. And she produced a chart, which out there that basically talked about, what the decrease in crime has been, and we talked about in past podcasts. But what's most important is that there was an AP poll that said the majority of U.S. citizens, overall 55% of the U.S. population, believe the use of military and National Guard to assist local police is okay. 55 to 37. As you can imagine, Republicans supported 82 to 15, Independents 46 to 38, with 15% undecided, but Democrats only 30% support stopping crime. Only 30% support stopping crime. Again, a 70-30 issue, 80-20, whatever, they're losing. They're just losing out on this in a big, big way. And so Trump is just really pushing this. And here's a video on my X. You should follow me, Tom ZWTPC at X, because I post things all week long. That's kind of my go-to place for instant stuff, things you need to know or you might want to know that's really quick. So go to x.com. You just need an email to sign up, and then search on Tom ZWTPC and follow. But I've been following this guy, and he really is a smart guy. I never knew him before, and you should follow him too. But listen to what he says about why we're having the problems of crime in this country and why Trump is right to address it. This is a really good video.
Donald Trump is making a play for the 98% of Americans who are not professional criminals. Democrats, of course, are taking the bait, calling his pledge to reduce murder in Washington, D.C., quote, fascist. Just a week in, the results have been pretty stunning. According to the D.C. Police Union, violent crime and car theft are down 21%, robbery is down 46%, carjacking, the crime that set it off after big balls got jacked, is down 83%. So how did crime get so bad, and how can Trump fix it? First mystery is voters hate violent crime, obviously. Yet American cities have crime rates rivaling Haiti, suggesting there is some slippage between what voters want and what politicians deliver. A recent YouGov poll found Americans think we're not tough enough on crime by a 4-1 margin. Now this seems like a freebie for any enterprising politician. El Salvador's base President Bukele hit 90% approval after he cut murder rates 96%. El Salvador is now safer than Vermont. So it's possible, and it's popular. Why doesn't it happen? Two reasons: progressive laws that coddle criminals and progressive budgets that raid police and prisons and hand the money to activists. So the laws happened in the 1960s when the progressive Warren Court tied police and judges' hands by restricting voluntary confessions, tossing good faith evidence and warrants, and funding hundreds of thousands of public defenders. He slashed the odds of doing time, so Nobel economist Gary Becker estimated that by the late 60s, the expected sentence for committing a murder was just 5 years. For robbery, it was 3 months. For car theft or burglary, it was less than 2 weeks. Now, courts responded by plea bargaining over 90% of crimes with an average 80% discount off the sentence. Toss an aggressive prosecution of police, and this made it very hard to catch, prosecute, and imprison criminals. And when they are imprisoned, they get out fast. Meanwhile, budgets were raided by progressives, most notoriously closing the asylums that dumped 500,000 insane people onto the streets, giving us an instant nationwide homeless crisis that, of course, was blamed on capitalism. During COVID, they moved on to emptying the prisons while defunding police budgets. The result is career criminals with zero fear, while police resources are starved. To give a sense, the Congressional Research Service estimates up to 400,000 rape kits sit untested, literally expiring while the rapists run free. So how can Trump fix it? The quickest way is flood the zone with resources. That's what El Salvador did. Take the trillions we spend invading Afghanistan or propping up Ukraine's and use it to protect actual Americans. The longer game is reverse those 1960s decisions. So allow good faith warrants and exclusionary rules, voluntary confessions, restrict plea bargains, and defund the public defender industrial complex that's currently protecting criminals and illegals. And if the court won't play ball, the nuclear option, suspend habeas corpus, meaning mass sweeps and no trials like Lincoln and FDR did, and Bush II tried in Guantanamo. Now, this probably won't happen, but Trump's style is bring it up. So it's next brought to you by I Trust Capital. Trump won the White House by turning the deep blue Rust Belt red. If he goes all in on law and order, cities like New York, Philly, and even Chicago could go purple enough to flip the state, yes, even California. Progressives will fight every inch for criminals like they fight for illegals, but Trump's got the opportunity of a lifetime. Read the rest with charts and all the gory details at propsandunch.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.
So there you go. Isn't that a good video? And I'll link to that on our podcast page. We did this to ourselves intentionally. The Warren Court basically destroyed our legal system to help destroy it. And I will say to you, and I talk to you all the time about, this was all part of a plan. This is what the communists wanted to do, to create chaos, to destroy the greatness of America. And so he talks about how Trump can fix it, and he's trying to fix it. And, you know, they're going to Chicago. So there's lots involved here. First of all, he proved it worked. Second of all, he got the Dems to stupidly defend crime, defend criminals. How's that going to win you votes? Then he's got the black vote really starting to pay attention, like, holy cow, we don't have to live this way. And now there's people in Chicago saying, come here. And he's going to. Chicago is next. That is going to be a major election thing. If Trump is seen as the anti-crime president, what do you think's going to happen? People are going to vote for him. It's a big issue. 81%, a poll came out this week, 81% of Americans think crime in large cities is a big issue. Lots of those people are minorities who are the ones that suffer from the crime. So this is brilliant on every front. And Trump is pressing it, and this is going to be important. Major shakeup coming. Trump and GOP plot sweeping crime crackdown. President Donald Trump announced on Wednesday that he is working with Republican lawmakers to craft a new crime bill. In a post on Truth Social, the president wrote, Speaker Mike Johnson and Leader John Thune are working with me and other Republicans on a comprehensive crime bill. It is what our country needs, and now more to follow. Okay, so this is kind of what Peter Ong was saying in that video. They should change the laws to reinstall, to get rid of these things that keep us from locking up criminals and stopping crime and stopping the chaos. So this is what we voted for. This is, again, Trump, brilliant strategy. Okay. And then he ends up with this executive order this week, the cornering strategy. Trump orders end a cashless bail in D.C., offers National Guard in Chicago. And this article is from the hotair.com, and it says, Bill Clinton employed a triangulation strategy to co-opt Republican voters. Donald Trump has spent the first 7 months of his presidency employing the same cornering strategy. Trump has used his bully pulpit, perhaps in the most literal sense since Roosevelt's, to force Democrats to corner themselves into fringe positions on issues that matter most to American voters. This month, Trump has used executive orders on crime to force Democrats to side with criminals. He's about to force them to double down with his latest move to end cashless bail in Washington, D.C., in his efforts to use federal funding to leverage the same across the country. One order from Trump directs Attorney General Bondi to identify federal funds that could be suspended or eliminated if states and local jurisdictions have cashless bail policies. He and his administration see such policies as overly lenient. Others view them as central to preventing discrimination in the criminal justice system based on wealth. Okay, so the Dems are saying, oh, it's racist to make a criminal put up bail money. And as Dr. Allen points out, he's a PhD, by the way, he says, they just go in and they're back out on the streets. And that's Trump saying, we got to stop that. It causes a misuse of police resources to have to keep rearresting them again and all that. And so he's going to make the Dems stand against this. And if he can create a crime bill that creates laws that are in place across the country, it'll make a big deal of difference. It'll make a big difference. Let's see. No cash bail is generally considered a progressive approach to criminal justice, as such reforms have been implemented in states like New York. Data shows that bail elimination can lead to higher recidivism rates. The Data Collaborative for Justice concluded in February 2024 that the elimination of money bail increased recidivism for people charged with nonviolent felonies with recent criminal histories and with a recent violent felony arrest, while it decreased recidivism for people charged with misdemeanors. So it works in some cases, but not for serious crimes, and that's what they're doing with it, okay? Chicago is next, and this is not just good for America, not just good for your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, right? How can you be free if you're afraid to go outside your house? There's all kinds of stories about people going to DC restaurants and for the first time feeling safe to walk the streets. That should be the norm, not the exception. That's what Trump is doing. It's a winning strategy, and the Dems, the left, have no answer. No answer. And to prove they have no answer, only lies, let's move, to this horrific story that, transfixed the nation this week. Media pretends trans suspects' motives for Catholic school shooting is a mystery, right? So we had this horrific shooting in Minneapolis, Minnesota. A trans insane person killed young Catholic students, 8 and 10-year-old, 2 kids were killed, and we pray, and I hope you prayed for their families and for all the other victims. I think it was 18 or 19 were wounded. But this is what you have to focus on. This is what you need to focus on. The corporate media are spreading the hoax that the motive behind the transsexual suspects' mass shootings strategy remains a mystery. Robert Westman, a 23-year-old man who identified as a woman named Robin, reported to use a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol on Wednesday morning to shoot through the windows of Minneapolis Catholic Church while school children attended Mass inside. He killed 2 children and wounded 14 others, and 3 children and 3 adults. Police say Westman killed himself at this scene. Here's what we know. He left behind a video where he said, F those kids, where's your effing God now? He pinned a photo depicting the head of Jesus Christ to a shooting range target. On one gun magazine, on the guns themselves, he wrote, kill Donald Trump. On another magazine and weapon, he wrote, where is your God? Kill Trump now. Israel must fall. Burn Israel. 6 million wasn't enough. Talking about the Holocaust. Most notably, at least to me, was a sticker with a trans flag, a semi-automatic rifle, and the words, defend equality. And this is about this effort. There's an actual effort by communist-funded lefties to create this mental illness and to get them to kill people. That's what's really going on here, folks. This is planned. This is something they're trying to do. And then the police say he stood outside a Catholic church where he almost certainly knew little kids were attending mass and fired off an untold number of rounds. Yeah, we got a real whodunit on our hands here. Gee, what could be his motives? Be to aim at least 3 weapons into the Catholic church filled with little Catholic kids. It's baffling, okay? And so the Minneapolis police chief once again said they have no motive for the trans shooter at the Annunciation Catholic Church today, to cite the motives being literally written on the guns. The leftists are trying to bury this. Don't let it happen. Don't let it happen. You need to go to X. You need to go to WeThePeopleConvention.org, and you need to share the truth. He was a trans activist. He went to the school. His mother worked there. And there's an effort in the trans community to what? To go after the church, to blame the church for not accepting gays, right? We're not accepting a mental illness. That's what this is. And they want us to pretend it's not. I wrote on X, anyone who supports trans rights is confirming that they have mental illness themselves and need treatment and should be removed from any position of authority in our society. If you see anyone in your society, in any organization, who thinks that boys can be girls and girls can be boys just by thinking that, they are sick, dangerous, and incompetent, and they need to be removed. And you need to go after them with everything you've got. The doctors who treat these kids with these drugs and surgeries are also sick, and they are criminals, and they need to be charged. And I wrote that, and there was an X post that showed all the trans killers. Trans killing is becoming a real epidemic. And so Jesee Waters just spells it out in this video. Listen what Jesee Waters has to say.
A suicidal transgender who hates Trump's Christians and Jews shoots up kids at a Catholic school, and the media wants to take away your handgun. So how are we supposed to protect ourselves from trans shooters? The media is bad at pattern recognition. We aren't. Just 2 years ago, another trans 20-something walked into a Christian school in Nashville with a rifle and shot 3 kids and 3 adults. They buried the manifesto and locked down the case. We've seen trans shootings in Colorado and in Maryland. They even shot up an ICE facility in Texas. And it seems like half of Antifa's trans. A couple of they-thems just got popped for firebombing Teslas. The mayor of Minneapolis says, you can't say that.
Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. We should not be operating out of a place of hate for anyone. We should be operating from a place of love for our kids.
I don't hate anyone who thinks they're trans. I feel sorry for them. But statistically, the trans population has been prone to violence. That's not villainizing, that's reality. And if you can't recognize reality, you're in danger. We love the American people, especially American children. And if they're troubled and believe they're somehow a girl trapped in a boy's body, we want to get them help. We don't want to give them hormones and operate on them. Society shouldn't be trying to produce more trans kids. We shouldn't be encouraging an emotional disorder or whatever this is. And doctors should stop profiting from it. Great Britain ended child sex change surgeries. They said it's barbaric, and they're right.
It's barbaric, and they're right. And get this clear. There's no such thing as trans. It's a fiction. There's gender dysphoria, a well-known mental illness that has been documented for decades. This is a creation to do what? To destroy children, families, communities, and American society. I have said to you over and over, and if you're new to this podcast, we always bring receipts. This was done intentionally by the communist Chinese. Oh, really, Tom? Oh, really? Yeah. Well, here's the article, okay, on our website that was posted. Let's see, what is the date on this? March 4th, 2024. Chinese behind promotion of trans agenda in the U.S. Blood money. Two of the biggest funders of the radical transgender movement in the U.S. are China-linked billionaires. Pro-Beijing groups, financially backed by two China-linked billionaires, are pushing the radical transgender movement as a means of advancing a Marxist agenda in the United States. Seven-time New York Times bestselling author Peter Schweitzer reveals in his new book, Blood Money, Why the Powerful Turn a Blind Eye While China Kills Americans. Right? What this kid did in Minneapolis, he killed Americans for China's benefit. In Blood Money, Schweitzer, who's a Breitbart News senior contributor and president of the Government Accountability Institute, reveals China's multi-pronged covert attack on America. In Chapter 6, called Destabilizing Democracy, Schweitzer explores how two billionaires, China-based American Neville Roy Singham and Alibaba co-founder Joseph Tsai, prop up radical activist groups that use transgenderism as a weapon against the capitalist order. Okay? That's a fact. This is not an accident. This is an assault on our nation. And then you got morons like Tim Walz, who made his state a trans sanctuary state, and sick people like that mayor of Minneapolis, who has no business being near anything of authority. Okay? And guess what? The churches in Minnesota reached out and asked Walz for funds to protect classrooms, and he snubbed them. This was like 2 years ago. He wouldn't help them protect themselves. And here's a little factoid for you. Charlie Kirk had a guy on his podcast this week who said, or maybe it was Steve Bannon, I can't remember, I'm sorry, who said there has not been any shootings in any school in this country where there's guns on staff, or that there's a policeman stationed there, or the staff are allowed to carry. Not one. But these idiots want schools to be no gun zones. And the proof shows that even though these people are mentally ill, they're not stupid. And they go, the national shooter said, I'm going to go to this school because they don't have any protection. When the hell are we going to fix that? Oh, I know when we're going to fix it. White House takes action after safety pleas from religious organizations ignored by Democrats. In a lengthy post on X yesterday, on Friday, Kristi Noem, the Homeland Security Secretary, said DHS is awarding $110 million to more than 600 faith-based organizations and nonprofits across the U.S. in the face of violent criminals and radical organizations intent on hurting American communities. The Trump administration is helping houses of worship, schools, and community centers to harden their defenses against attack and protect themselves. This money is administered through FEMA's nonprofit security grant program, may be used on security enhancements like cameras, warning and alert systems, gates and lighting, access control systems, and training programs for staff. Instead of granting money to fund climate change initiatives and political pet projects, we are using this money to protect American communities, especially places where people gather in prayer. That's leadership. That's Donald Trump. Your job is to check with your school, your daycare center, your church, your temple, and say, do you have guards? Or you have a big sign that says this facility is protected by armed staff and guards? If they don't, get it done. We're done with this. They're not going to kill our kids. If there's a guard at that school, that kid never kills anybody. He's probably dead, but he doesn't kill anybody. Share that. I'll post that story. And And then there's a story that, that talks about bring back asylum. It's time to talk about transgender fatigue in America. This is from Zero Hedge. Transgenderism is not a civil rights movement. It's a social engineering experiment. The LGBT movement is not a struggle for equal rights. It's a covert war for political control. The agenda of the people involved in the sphere of trans activism are radical, zealot, hell-bent on the destruction of their enemies by any means necessary. And if you believe in logic, objective reality, biological science, and moral imperatives, then you are one of their enemies. A prime strategy of the trans movement is the indoctrination of our children. They rarely have any children of their own, and in order to perpetuate their numbers, they must groom future generations to their cause. And it is becoming clear that if they can indoctrinate our kids, they are perfectly willing to murder our kids, your kids, our grandchildren. Get it? And the left supports this. The left is funding this. And I'm going to show you in this podcast how we and Donald Trump are destroying that funding. But more on this. Leftists throughout modern history have a habit of engaging in destabilization efforts when they don't get what they want. They view their motivations as sacrosanct and beyond criticism, be it saving democracy or saving the planet or taking down capitalism or colonials. In every case where the political left had influence over social conditions and then lost that power, they revert to direct exponential disruption and violence, from riots to assassinations. Sound familiar? Sound like Antifa BLM? Sound like the Trump assassinations? They claim to care about the rights of majority to have their voices heard, but in reality, they don't care at all. When the majority goes against the leftist narratives, leftists go rogue. All paid for by communist China, previously by Soviet Russia, and now by China. Do you get it? This isn't something that just happened. No, it didn't just happen. It's part of the destruction of our country that you and I and President Trump are trying to defeat. I've talked to you for 3 weeks now. This is the counter-revolution, right? Obama was their boy, right? Bring in Obama, fool all those dumb white guilt lefties and have them vote for a black man to show you're not racist, and then we'll destroy your rights. Then we'll create racism. We'll bring in DEI, critical race theory, in the 1619 Project. And we'll destroy American values so that we can overthrow the country, folks. We're going to fundamentally transform America, into a communist country. Barack Obama's a commie. All the Dems are commies. I showed you last week. Go to the front page of WeThePeopleConvention.org. The Dems are owned by China. Click, you'll see the proof. We always bring receipts. So I love this. This was awesome, okay? Because in the midst of this, they keep talking to us about, follow the science and, whether it's COVID or anything else, that they're on the side of science. But they're not. They corrupt science. They debase science. They debase the law. They're not for democracy. Everything they say is the opposite of what they believe and what they do. So then RFK Jr. says, HHS will investigate the meds taken by trans Minnesota Catholic shooter. In the wake of the Minneapolis Catholic shooting on Wednesday, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the nation must examine whether psychiatric medication is contributing to the rise in mass shootings, and announced an investigation into the matter by Health and Human Services. He called the violence a health crisis and said for the first time his administration is conducting studies for a possible link. Yeah, those doctors and those psychiatrists and those people who want to push the trans ideology and say, you can either have a dead son or a live daughter, right? Most of them are Marxists. They hate America. They hate you. They don't have children. They hate children. They hate God. They hate Christianity. They hate the West. But RFK Jr., watch this video, man. He's calling them out, and they're going to be running for the hills. Watch this.
I certainly consider mass shootings a health crisis, and we are doing for the first time real studies to find out what the etiology of that is. And we're looking for the first time at psychiatric drugs. You know, these kind of mass shooting, people have had guns in this country forever. When I was a kid, we had shooting clubs at our school. People, kids, my classmates, other people, would bring a .22 rifle with their guns to school and park it in the parking lot. Nobody was shooting. So there's never been a time in America, in the history of humanity, and people walked into a crowd, into a church or a movie theater or a school or a crowd of strangers and just started randomly shooting. It's happening in our country. It's not happening around the world. And there are many other countries that have comparable levels of guns that we have in this country. We had comparable levels in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and people weren't doing that. Something changed, and it dramatically changed human behavior. And one of the culprits we need to examine is whether the fact that we are the most over-medicated nation in the world, and that a lot of those are psychiatric drugs that have black box warnings on them that warn of suicidal and homicidal ideation. So we are doing those studies right now for the first time, and we will have an answer.
Wow. Oh, baby. Yeah, and you know what? Marijuana is another one. We've talked about your writing to the president saying, don't reclassify marijuana. There is evidence that marijuana produces this type of activity as well. Kids, this was planned. Something changed? Yeah, no kidding. Something changed. We decided to destroy the mental health of our children. That's what changed. And so it all fits together. And if you're new to this podcast, that's what we try to do. That's why it's called weekly, news and opinion. We don't just tell you what's going on. We try to connect the dots and explain it. So here's a big explanation. If you're going to try to destroy America, one of the biggest problems is we have 300 million guns. And it's pretty hard to overthrow the country if the people will actually fight if they have that many guns. So what have they done? They've created this gun violence. We didn't shoot each other before. We had just as many guns. Other countries have as many guns, but they aren't shooting each other. So why are we? How about if we medicate these kids? How about if we put this ideology in their heads? How about if we make them feel hopeless and helpless so that the only way out is to kill themselves? As this guy in Minneapolis said, I'm tired of being trans. And he wanted to die because he knew trans was a lie. This is an effort to take our guns, and the Dems all jump on board. Oh, here's another shooting. We need to take away your handgun. As Jesee Waters said, yeah, if you take away our guns, how do we protect ourselves against these lunatics you're creating? It all fits together. It's a war, a real war. We are in a civil war against the communist left. We are winning now, but we got a long way to go. And the way to go is to get rid of those drugs, charge the people who are prescribing them. There's lots of talk now, and this has to happen. If you do this, it will stop. The mother is not cooperating with the police, supposedly, because they're complicit. His father and mother knew this was going to happen, didn't stop it. There were groups he was part of that talked about you should kill Christians. Those people need to be arrested. You cannot insinuate violence and not be guilty of a crime. That's why this is important. And your responsibility, if you watch this podcast, is to share this information so that others understand the big picture. And our chapters player on our podcast page allows you to share these stories. Okay? So that's what it's all about. But boy, do they hate RFK? Oh, they hate RFK. They didn't like that statement that he's going to look under the curtain and see what's causing these people from doing this, right? Yeah. So what did RFK do this week? Yeah, something we voted for. He rescinds emergency use authorization for COVID-19, which was what the left used to just jam COVID down your throat. Emergency use authorization, they suspended all the laws, and now it's gone. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. announced Wednesday that the Food and Drug Administration rescinded emergency use authorization for COVID-19 vaccines. He said, I promised 4 things as HHS Secretary. 1, to end the COVID vaccine madness. 2, to keep vaccines available to people who want them, especially the vulnerable. 3, to demand placebo-controlled trials for companies. And 4, to end the COVID emergency. He just did that this week. Promises made, promises kept. And they lost their ever-loving minds, okay? They had walkouts at the CDC. And the left media was covering it like it was, oh my gosh, because, he's a lunatic, except their studies. And he showed you last week, and I put the graphic up with Moderna and Pfizer and all them sponsoring the American Pediatric Society, which is prescribing these drugs for 6-month-olds with no testing that shows they do any good. He's for the science. They're against the science, but they're attacking RFK. This was in some article. CDC upheaval pushes public health. It was at the Hill, by the way. Public health into uncharted waters. In less than a week, the public health sector has been plunged into chaos as leaders at the Center for Disease Control and Prevention leave the agency amid heightened political tensions with the Trump administration. The Trump Department of Health and Human Services announced Wednesday that Susan Monarez would no longer serve as CDC director. This was followed by the resignations of 4 top leaders. Dmitry Daskalakis, director of the Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. Daniel Jurgen, director of National Center for Emergency and Zoonotic Infectious Diseases. Deborah Horry, CDC Medical Chief Officer, and Jennifer Light, director of Office of Public Health and Surveillance, all put in their resignations following the COVID vaccine, taking off the emergency use list. They did their typical, they had a march out of the building, and all the other lefties were on the sidewalk going, "We love you, you're great." And in their resignations, they use words like birthing people and stuff. This guy, Dmitry Daskalakis, go look his ass up. Yeah, this guy is a Satan worshiper. Literally, he's a Satan worshiper. He's woke as can be. He's gay as can be. We don't want these people in our government. Oh, but the Democrats, for Democrats on Capitol Hill, the chaos is enough to call for Secretary Robert F. Kennedy's termination. Senator Minority Leader Chuck Schumer said Friday that keeping Kennedy in the position will make many more people sick and cause more deaths. And by keeping Robert Kennedy in charge of HHS, Trump is doubling down on his own failure. President Trump must admit his mistake and remove Kennedy now. If Trump does not remove Kennedy before this kook fully unleashes the crackpot conspiracy theories on American vaccination efforts, Trump will bear the responsibility for the unnecessary and preventable illnesses and deaths that result. Guess what, Chucky? There aren't going to be deaths. We're going to prove that these have been a fraud for decades, and that you and the Democrats have been taking money from Big Pharma and the Rhino Republicans to hurt our children, to hurt our health. You are complicit. That's why you're screaming at the top of your lungs, because you don't want to be exposed for the liars and frauds and criminals and thieves that you are. Kennedy is going to make them prove vaccines work, or any drug works, or it's not going to be given the authority of the federal government. What a concept. And then, just to twist the knife a little more. I thought this was really good. RFK Jr. cancels $122 million in LGBT and diversity grants. Department of Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy has eliminated $122 million in federal funding tied to LGBT initiatives and diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, marking a significant shift in agency priorities under the Trump administration. The cuts, which began in March, targeted, get this, 195 projects that Kennedy and the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, deemed overly focused on race, gender, and sexual orientation. The White House has backed Kennedy's efforts, brushing aside criticism from activist groups and some academic institutions. Sources inside the administration say the move is part of a broader effort to remove ideology bias from public funded research. It should never have been there. The Trump administration has made similar moves elsewhere in recent months. In May, the Department of Justice redirected more than $800 million in DI and transgender-related grants towards law enforcement and public safety programs. That's $800 million plus the $122 million is like $1 billion. Last week, the U.S. Supreme Court allowed, and we reported this, the Trump administration to proceed with another $783 million in National Institutes of Health grant cuts to DI-focused research. The court said he could do it. Why was this being done? To destroy our kids, to destroy our health. Did you see this? That the communists figured out they could buy enough politicians and they could get in our government and use your tax dollars to destroy you, your family, our nation. That's what's been going on. That's what we're stopping. Can you say wow? I'm saying wow, and keep bringing it on. Because this is our health departments that are basically paying to make your kids mentally ill. These people are sick. We need to bring them to justice. This is evil incarnate. And that was Satan acting through that person in Minneapolis. This is a war, a moral, a biblical, a war between good and evil. We've got to win it. This is how we win it. By Robert F. Kennedy and Kristi Noem and others doing the things to defeat Satan. So this, I want to move now, into what is really, I think, an important story for January 6th. January 6th, so many of us, we supported the January 6ers. We were at January 6th. Many of you were at January 6th. We were so glad they got pardoned by Trump. We want this investigation of the 2020 election, and it's coming. I'm going to show you that. But now we're seeing some things that are really great for January 6th and the members. So let me cover that next. DNI Tulsi Gabbard uncovers burn bags of documents tied to the 2020 election corruption hidden from the public. Trump is having a staff meeting, and they go around the table and everybody says what they're doing. And Tulsi Gabbard blurts this out. President Donald Trump announced that current Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has uncovered bags of hidden documents related to corruption in the 2020 election. And speaking in front of his administration as they continue a historic federal crime crackdown in Washington, Trump said that Noem has found, he said that Tulsi Gabbard has found many bags of information. I think they call them burn bags. They're supposed to be burned and they didn't get burned, having to do with the corrupt 2020 election. And when will that all come out? He asked Gabbard. Gabbard said, Mr. President, I will be first to brief you once we have that information collected, but you're right. We are finding documents literally tucked away in the back of safes in random offices in these bags and in other areas. which again speaks to the intent of those who are trying to hide the truth from the American people and trying to cover up the politicization that has led by people like John Brennan, James Clapper, and others that have caused real, immeasurable harm to the American people and to our country. She said, I've got a long list of things that we're investigating. We have the best people going after this, election integrity being one of the things we're going after. Now, listen to this statement. This is, wow. We have evidence of how these electronic voting machines have been vulnerable to hackers for a very long time and vulnerable to exploitation to manipulate the results of votes being cast, which further drives forward your mandate to bring about paper ballots across the country so that voters can have faith in the integrity of our elections. In June, President Trump posted on Truth Social that he wants a special prosecutor to investigate fraud in the 2020 presidential election, which was allegedly, quote, won by Joe Biden. She's saying they have proof, which we felt they had, that got buried by Comey and Strzok and Page and whatever, all of them, to rig the election. I think they've got the goods. And the president said, we're going to have an investigation. This is the coming storm. Russia. And what they're doing now with the Clintons and with Brennan and Clapper and the raid on Bolton and all that stuff, which we're going to talk about. This is going to be even bigger. The 2020 election is going to be bigger. And then the January 6th investigation will follow that up. And then we'll go into 2024 and the lawfare. Folks, I know you can't wait. I know you're impatient. It's coming. This storm is coming. And if they actually have burn bags with evidence, wow. This is going to be huge. And I think you will think, and I think this is huge. Judicial Watch announced Air Force grants funeral honors to Ashley Babbitt. I was so happy to see this. In full disclosure, we have a relationship with Judicial Watch, our organization. We have worked with them for a long time. Back in the day, they helped us when the IRS was targeting us. Tom Fitton and his team have been good to us. But they have been working for Ashley Babbitt and her family, and this is a big get. Judicial Watch announced today that U.S. Air Force will finally provide full military funeral honors to Ashley Babbitt, the Air Force veteran who was shot and killed inside the U.S. Capitol by then Capitol Police Lieutenant Michael Byrd on January 6, 2021. Babbitt was the only official January 6 homicide victim. The Biden administration had previously denied Babbitt and her family these honors in retaliation for being at the Capitol that day. This decision comes on the heels of a massive, nearly $5 million Trump administration settlement to her family for wrongful death and other claims against the government. On July 23, 2025, Judicial Watch Senior Counsel Robert Stitch wrote a letter to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth asking him to reverse the grave national injustice of denying Babbitt and her family military funeral honors. I'm writing to urge you to make a new determination granting military funeral honors for Ashley Elizabeth Pamaton, a.k.a. Ashley Elizabeth McIntyre, Ashley Elizabeth Babbitt, a war on terror veteran of the U.S. Air Force and the Air National Guard. And the decision was finally to extend the funeral honors was confirmed in a letter August 15th, written by Undersecretary of the Air Force Matthew Longmire to Aaron Babbitt, Ashley's husband, and Ashley Babbitt's mother, Michelle Whitehoff. On behalf of the Secretary of the Air Force, I write to extend the offer for military funeral honors for Ashley Babbitt. I understand that the family's initial request was denied by Air Force leadership in a letter dated February 9th, 2021. However, after reviewing the circumstances of Ashley's death and considering the information that has come forward since then, I am persuaded that the previous determination was incorrect and Ashley Babbitt now gets full military funeral honors. Good work, Tom Fenton. Good work, Judicial Watch. Thank you. Thank you for standing up for this. That was awesome. And then This popped up, just a short little story. Judge reluctantly authorizes refund of restitution paid by January 6th rider. It is the first time a January 6th rider who was convicted and then pardoned will get a refund. U.S. District Judge John Bates approved the return of $2,000 in restitution paid by Yvonne St. Cyr, concluding that because she had appealed her conviction and the appeal was still pending when the Trump's pardon ended her case altogether, she was no longer guilty in the eyes of the law and was entitled to the return of her funds. She was also refunded a separate $270 penalty applied after her sentencing. So this goes into that direction of restitution. We said, you said, all of us said that it was not enough for the, all the January 6th, political prisoners to be released. It wasn't enough for them to be pardoned. They need to be made whole by this corrupt government. They need restitution. And so, Ashley Babbitt got $5 million. This woman got her fines refunded. That's not enough. And so we were just really unhappy with this. AG Pam Bondi sides with Biden regime, seeks dismissal of Proud Boys' January 6th lawsuit, insists claims of political persecution lack merit, despite reams of evidence reported at the Gateway Pundit. I don't get this. Attorney General Pam Bondi is seeking to dismiss a $100 million lawsuit filed by the Proud Boys over the political prosecution they suffered in the wake of the January 6th protests. In a court submission on Monday, DOJ asked for the lawsuit to be dismissed, stating that the malicious prosecution claim lacks merit and the United States is not liable for punitive damages. The filing undercuts the argument long supported by Trump administration that those who were imprisoned following January 6 attacks were victims of political prosecution. The suit was filed in June by Enrico Tarrio, the former Proud Boy leader, along with Joseph Briggs, Ethan Nordian, Zachary Real, and Dominic Pizzola. Their lawsuit argues that their prosecutions were an egregious and systemic abuse of the legal system and the United States Constitution to punish and oppress political allies of President Trump by any and all means necessary, legal or illegal. Despite President Trump's decision to offer an unconditional pardon to all involved, it appears that Pam Bondi and the Justice Department do not agree that they were victims of the Biden regime. The evidence against the Proud Boys show they were set up. They had, the FBI and DOJ had informants in the group that were trying to pretend that they were going to try to overthrow the government. It was a total setup. We showed you that the Project Veritas showed that A.G. Barr had the Proud Boys on his hit list to go after. And now Pam Bondi and the DOJ are not going to do this? Oh, no. Oh, no. First ask of the show. If you're new to the show, we don't just talk about the news and how it affects you. We fight. We protect our freedom, liberty, and prosperity. This is an affront to our freedom and liberty. First ask of the show. You need to get on Pam Bondi big time. You need to contact her directly. You need to go on social media. You need to take this story, which I will post on our website. You need to share it, and you need to say, no. Drop this case. Settle with the Proud Boys. The Proud Boys were a great American organization. They were patriots. They're not criminals. That's what the left wants you to think. We know that's not true. I'm asking all of you to defend the Proud Boys. This week, after the holiday, get all over Pam Bondi. Because that's what we do. We protect our freedom and liberty. And what they did to the Proud Boys was an attempt to take away your freedom and liberty. Rise up, We the People Convention members and viewers of this podcast, next week. And I'll let you know about that in the week. And so, why do we do that? Because it works. And we have proof of that because we won a big win this week. I went nuts after President Trump said, oh, we want to let 600,000 Chinese students into our country. We said, hell no. And I asked you to write to the president and tell President Trump, we don't want 600,000 Chinese. And you went to this page on our website and clicked the link below here so you could write to President Trump. And tens of thousands of you did that. And the president posted this week, breaking news. The White House released a statement clarifying that Trump is not letting 600,000 Chinese students into the country. He's just continuing the existing policy while renegotiating a trade deal. The 60,000 reference was really a 2-year extension of the current 300,000. We called BS on this backtrack. Furthermore, we do not want a continuation of the existing policy, which allows communist Chinese to spy on us and steal our intellectual property. Get the damn Chinese out of the USA. By the way, why haven't we caught and deported the 30 to 60,000 military-age Chinese who crossed our border yet? That's what we want to see. We don't want to continue the policy. Marco Rubio was already deporting them. That's what we voted for. And so they went on Fox News and tried to say, oh, this was a reasonable thing to do this. No, it's not. No, it's not. And I'll give you multiple reasons. First of all, what we say they're spies. This week, the FBI caught a Chinese student who was trying to go back to China with medical information that was classified in Texas. Okay? They're spies. Get them the hell out. Second of all, Trump said, oh, this will be devastating to our colleges. Oh, really? Guess what? We want those 300,000 spots they're now taking for American kids. But he said, but 15% of American colleges would close if we lost the money from these 300,000 Chinese. And then that chart, on that there's a chart on that story that shows how many are from India and the rest of Asia. Yeah, guess what? Those colleges that would close need to become trade schools. We don't need college graduates like we did before. We need plumbers, HVAC people, and things like that. Okay? So the president is wrong. We proved it. We backed him off. Keep the pressure up. That was a win. That's why when I say go after Pam Bondi, we'll get our way because we're in charge. We elected them. They aren't going to win in 2026 without us. Demand that they do what we voted for. We voted for restitution for the Proud Boys and all the J6ers. We voted to get the damn Chinese spies out of our country. And we got the president to back off. We also won after Cracker Barrel. After they went woke, okay? Cracker Barrel scraps new logo design, keeps old timer after listening to customers with a statement, "We thank our guests for sharing your voices and love for Cracker Barrel." The restaurant chain said in a statement on Fox News, "We said we would listen, and we have. Our new logo is going away, and our old-timer logo will remain. At Cracker Barrel, it's always been and always will be about serving up delicious food, warm welcomes, and a kind of country hospitality that feels like family." Yeah, you did that. You made that happen, but it wasn't enough. Because behind the scenes, they've been using the money you spent in their gift shop, which we love, okay, and in their food to push DEI and trans and pride. And so it was important that they backed off on that. After a week in a barrel of its own making, the woke crazies who colonized Cracker Barrel have reversed course on a number of dreadful decisions, including a child grooming gay pride page on its website. A corporate website for Cracker Barrel had a gay pride page. What the hell? On Wednesday, Breitbart News reported that a Cracker Barrel statement released the same day titled Our Promise to You made no mention of any promise to stop hosting all-age gay pride events. Cracker Barrel has even gone so far as to proudly publish photos of little kids attending one of these events in Nashville. Those pages disappeared on Thursday, okay, because you kept going after them. So, next ask. I asked you to talk to Pam Bounty. Next ask. We love Cracker Barrel. And the founder of Cracker Barrel was right. He said there's nothing like Cracker Barrel. Think about it. There's lots of other restaurants, but the gift shop with the restaurant, where else do you see that? That's no national chain does that. So they're unique, and that's a good thing. But Nan and I are going to go to Cracker Barrel, but you know what I'm going to do? You know what I want you to do? I want you to call for the manager. And I want you to say, I do not want any of my money to sponsor these destructive things against children in our country. Therefore, you as the manager need to tell your regional director or your supervisor that we will stop coming if you don't stop supporting these anti-American efforts. They'll get that message big time. Okay? I guarantee you, Nan and I will do that the next time we go to Cracker Barrel and the time after that. Don't have to keep going, but then we're going to be checking their website to see. And if they don't do it, we're going to print out the nonsense, the stories, and we're going to hand it to the manager. We will not stand for this. You will not use us. You will not lie to us and have these American flags and all this great, historical stuff on the walls and all this really American value stuff, in your store, and behind the scenes be stabbing us in the back. We're not standing for that. You're not standing for that. We're going to defend that flag, our nation, our values, and our families and our children. So, big win. But keep pressing. Keep pressing. We're winning, but the fight continues, right? The fight continues. Keep fighting. This is a good story. U.S. economy surges past expectations as spending and investments soar. U.S. economy expanded faster than initially estimated in the spring as Americans spent more freely and businesses stepped up investments according to revised government data. The gross domestic product rose at 3.3% annualized rate in the second quarter, up from the Commerce Department's initial 3% estimate and above the 3.1 pace economists had forecast. Our acceleration followed modest growth in the first quarter. The upward revision reflects households spending more on healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and dining out, while companies boosted purchases on equipment and intellectual property. So this is important that the economy is doing okay despite all the fear mongering about tariffs. And the stock market, record highs this month of August. It's taking off. And then this story came out. A U.S. trade deficit widens as industrial imports surge. Petroleum and industrial supplies drive July's $103 billion gap, suggesting strong demand in a resilient economy. The U.S. goods trade deficit widened sharply in July as imports of oil and industrial supplies soared, signaling firm domestic demand in an economy where manufacturing and consumers appear to be drawing heavily on fuel, chemicals, and raw materials to keep activity humming. Imports and industrial supplies, including petroleum, rose more than 25%, while capital goods climbed 4.8%. Part of the import surge may reflect robust domestic demand. Some could also be due to stockpiling ahead of President Trump's early August deadlines for country-specific tariffs. Bottom line is, the economy is doing good. Inflation is in check, and it looks like the Fed basically are going to cut the rate 0.25%. In September, it should be 0.5%, but that's going to help. And oh, by the way, interest rates for mortgages are now getting close to 6%, and there's now a surplus. There's more houses for sale than buyers, which will do what? Bring down housing prices. Really important. Really important. Big thing that no one's talking about. So let me just close this half of the show with this story. Are we better off than we were a year ago? During the October 28, 1980 presidential debate, Ronald Reagan closed by asking Americans if they were better off than they were 4 years earlier under Jimmy Carter. If we ask that question today and change the time element to a year, it would be obvious. Yes, we are better off. How? Please consider these things. The border. Biden wanted to change America by waving in unvetted and unassimilable migrants. Trump shut off the pipeline before the U.S. fell in the way Great Britain and other European countries have. They're gone. It was too late. We did it just in time because you did it. You gave everything you had to win last November, and Trump is acting on that. Energy. Biden's plan was to choke energy production. Trump has unleashed it, and we have the lowest gasoline price on Labor Day weekend since, 2021 or something, $3.19 a gallon. We got rid of the green radicalism that was destroying fossil fuels, which fuels capitalism. Medium household income. During the first 5 months of Trump's second term, the average medium household income adjusted for inflation grew by $1,174, says Steve Moore on the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. When comparing Trump's first term with Biden's only term, the real after-inflation gain was $6,434 per family for Trump and only $551 from Biden. Crime. America's biggest cities are run by Democrats who don't care about street crime, and Trump is cleaning it up, and Trump has brokered peace throughout the world, and he's still working on it. Allow us to stipulate, Donald Trump is neither a perfect man nor a flawless president. He should be criticized when he makes missteps, like we said, no 600,000 Chinese, and recognized for his achievements. And you should write to the president when you like things as well. But his presidency is a vast improvement over the mess that entangled us a year ago, and far better than the debacle we would have had to live through had Harris won in November. We are healthier, more vigorous, more optimistic nation, and we are better off financially than we were a year ago. Thank you, President Trump. Thank you for doing what we voted for, but the job is not done. And we'll talk more about that in the second half of this podcast. Let's take a short break. You've been listening to the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and we'll be back after these messages. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. Something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. If you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday, so if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday, and in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast, and you will indeed share it with others. I thought there's a lot of good things in there, and you got to go after Pam Bondi. You got to let her know that we want the Proud Boys to get restitution for the crimes committed against them, right? And and then share the stories. I mean, like it says in that little description, share the stories with people, because they don't know that stuff. They don't understand what's going on. You do, but you got to share it. That's important. And I also want to thank all of you who donate to the We the People convention. We have people who've been donating this for 16 years. And we have $5 donors, $6 donors. We had a $3 donor this week. That's wonderful. Thank you to every one of you, because we have a lot of fights to fight. There's serious stuff going on. We're going to talk about that at the end of the podcast. I put a video out this week that you need to watch this weekend and share it with others. You need to get other people to watch it as well, because there's some really, really big things coming that are going to be difficult to handle. Okay. So that's what it's about. But I appreciate you being with us. We've got a great second half of the podcast, because still a lot going on. And then, you can use this. You have time on the Labor Day weekend. I know it's funny. I always used to think that it was not really worth me doing a podcast on a holiday, because you were busy doing stuff. And what I actually found is our viewership is higher during holidays, because you have more time. What are you going to do on Monday? Well, you're probably going to watch the podcast. So if you're doing it, thanks. I appreciate you. Thank you very much. And, and then share it. That's the key thing. And if you can give, please go to wethepeopleconvention.org and give what you can. It's really important to keep us going, because we're trying to get the word out. We're spending money to promote it on social media and other things. And that's what your donations go for. Okay. By the way, if you're new to this podcast, nobody at the We People Convention gets paid. I don't get paid. We put money into this, right? We pay expenses, right? We have, we pay for expenses and things, but I do not get a salary. I've never gotten a salary. I've never taken a salary in the history of this organization. No one gets paid for working at the We the People Convention. 100% of your donations help support us. Okay. So I want to make that clear. I haven't said that in a while. Okay. So let's get going. The Congress has been on recess. Oh, they worked so hard, right, that they had to be gone all August. And they had to come home so they could do, town halls with you guys. Except the left planned to ambush the Republicans at the town halls, and they did with some of them. We had a terrible situation in Cleveland with Bernie Moreno, our senator, where he was ambushed at his town hall by radical lunatic lefties who, beat drums and blow horns. They don't care about democracy. They want to destroy us. Okay. So The Republicans came home to have town halls and didn't have any town halls. They should have stayed in Washington. They should have stayed in Washington. I still don't get that. Okay, that was wrong. I think we could have forced that. And why President Trump let that happen, I don't know. But they're coming back after the holiday, and it's going to get really ugly really fast because we're going to have a government shutdown. Senator says Dems will withhold votes on spending bills unless cuts are reversed. Yeah, this has a real possibility of happening. Listen to this jerk. Bedford, Virginia. Senate Democrats will hold votes on legislation to fund the government unless Republicans and Trump administration commit to reversing cuts to education, healthcare, and research spending. Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, told the Epoch Times on August 28th. Warner made the remarks during a tour across the state where he discussed cuts in federal funding and their effects on Virginians. He said that Republicans would have to not only restore funding, but also guarantee that the executive branch won't withhold funds previously authorized by Congress, as it is currently doing. Nice try. They're going to shut down the government, and I'm thrilled. You and I have said all along, in the conservative Tea Party movement, we should shut the government down for 4 years because Congress does nothing but hurt us, okay? And then Trump can decide, what does a shutdown mean? Because remember when Obama threatened to face a shutdown? He decided to cut your Social Security, and he decided to hurt American people if you didn't give him his power back. But Trump could hurt the left and not fund them, but help American people. You'd get your Social Security check. The military would get paid. Trump would be in charge. Go ahead. Make our day. Shut it down, Chucky. Shut it down, Dems. We love it. Now, Thune is doing this. Thune's bid to change rules for nominees faces, what would you expect? GOP opposition. So remember, we wanted Congress to stay in session. Why? Because Barack Obama had 300 of his government appointees confirmed by 7 months into his administration, and Donald Trump has 174 when we control the House and the Senate. Really? So we wanted them to stay and confirm those people. Then they went home, and we said, okay, Trump can do recess appointments. And we've talked about in this show, recess appointment is if both the House and the Senate are are not convening for 10 days straight, Trump can then say, I'm appointing all these people. He should have done that. We should have done that. We didn't do that. And then Thune and those guys said, but we're going to fix him. Well, what's he going to do? Senate Majority Leader John Thune faces a difficult test in rallying GOP colleagues to change the Senate rules to speed up confirmations of approximately 140 Trump nominees. Changing the Senate's procedural rules with a simple majority vote is sometimes called the nuclear option because it's viewed as an extreme tactic. In this case, many Republicans, this is from The Hill, which is a lefty publication, many Republicans, it's 3, are ready to go nuclear. Many Republicans are ready to go nuclear because they think Democrats are unfairly holding up a number of low-level, non-controversial nominees. Democrats have refused to confirm a single civilian Trump appointee by voice, vote, or unanimous consent during his first 6.5 months on. Normally, most of these people are not controversial. It's assistant to the assistant, whatever. They have to confirm them. Anybody opposed? No. Everybody agree? Yes. They move on. They haven't allowed one of them. Instead, they're forcing 30 hours of debate per appointee. Why? So Trump can't govern. To tie his hands. To deny our vote. To say, what you voted for? Well, we don't care how you vote. They care about democracy, right? We don't care how you vote. We're going to deny you the ability to implement what you voted for. Okay? So that's what they've been doing. So now Thune is saying, we're going to go nuclear and we're going to have majority rules. We'll do that. We don't need 60 votes. Majority rules. But Thune still needs to sell a handful of members on the change, including Senators Tom Tillis, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins, who aren't yet on board with the proposal to weaken individual senators' ability to hold up nominees. A senior Senate Republican strategist said senators are going to be reluctant to give up their power to place holds on executive branch nominees, a power that GOP senators employed to gain leverage over the Biden administration. No, it's about themselves. It's about their special interests. Chuck Grassley was withholding, approval because he didn't like a policy Trump was doing. Make a law if you don't like the policy, but don't stop the executive branch for doing what the voters voted for them to do, Republicans. So here's the good news. You got Tillis, Murkowski, and Collins. You can lose 3. With Vance's votes, they can go nuclear and start approving these people day after day after day. Will they? We'll see. But if they don't, they're rhinos. They're trying to hurt us. And we will need to make them pay. So now Trump, with the Dems saying, oh, you got to quit cutting USAID and quit cutting the education department and quit cutting all these medical things, these DEI plans, or we're going to shut down the government. Yeah, Trump says, make my day. He's going to do something that we talked about. Trump scraps $5 billion in foreign aid in rare pocket rescission. Pocket rescission is this technique we told you that some say is unconstitutional, but he's going to try it, okay? Where you say, you send Congress a message saying, I want to cancel this spending, and if they don't act on it, and you got to do this within 45 days of the end of that fiscal year's budget, which this is, if they don't act, it goes into effect. President Trump is moving to cancel nearly $5 billion in congressionally approved foreign aid and peacekeeping spending in a rare pocket rescission, the Post has learned, making use of a legally debated maneuver that hasn't been done in 48 years. Trump on Thursday night notified Congress of his request to cancel the funds, which had been tied up in a court case until earlier in that day. A pocket rescission is a request that presented to Congress so that late in the fiscal year, which ends September 30th, that it's made regardless of whether Congress acts. Okay, the clawback takes $3.2 billion for the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, $322 million from the USAID State Department Democracy Fund, on and on and on. This is a test. Trump is going to see if this works, because if it does, there's going to be more. Okay? And so the Dems are losing their minds because they can't stop it. They can't stop it. And we're glad they can't stop it. And we're glad that Trump is doing it. Okay? Now, those of you who watch the podcast know that in the second half, I usually pivot a little bit to international news because it does affect our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So let me just touch on a few of those things. Kim and Putin are top G's guest list for China's huge military parade in defiant show of unity. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin will be among more than 24 foreign leaders who attend China's massive military parade next week, the Chinese Foreign Ministry announced Thursday. The parade, to be held in Beijing's Tiananmen Square on September 3rd, is part of China's commemorations to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II following Japan's formal surrender. The announcement, which places Putin and Kim at the top of Xi's guest list, sets the stage for an extraordinary photo op with the 3 autocratic leaders standing side by side atop the gates of heavenly peace in Beijing in an unequivocal show of unity. North Korean state news agency confirmed Kim's attendance in what would be North Korea's leader's first trip to China since 2019. Okay? That's not a surprise, but it shows you we are at war. Domestically, we are in a counter-revolution of a civil war. Internationally, it is the West fighting communism, totalitarian communism. And so they're standing up saying, we're going to fight you. That's why we got to do all the things we got to do to fight them. So on that front, speaking of fighting, Russian advances into new Ukraine region as peace talks stall. Let's see here. Russian forces have entered the villages, and I can't pronounce the names, 3 villages, according to Ukrainian military officials. The area, a key industrial hub bordering the fiercely contested Donetsk region, has become a new flashpoint amidst Russia's ongoing campaign in eastern Ukraine. The latest advance adds to mounting pressure, get this, along a 620-mile front line that continues to strain Ukraine's military resources. I was looking at that. That's like from Detroit to New York. Ukraine is fighting the Russians along a 620-mile border. Earlier this month, Russian forces made a significant breakthrough near Proskovsk in the Donetsk region. Troops reportedly pushed up to 8 miles in a single day, breaking through Ukrainian lines. This move threatens to sever a key supply route connecting these cities, raising concerns over Ukraine's ability to hold its current defensive lines. The bottom line is, this is Russia pressing, because if they're going to do a peace deal, they want all they can get. And they're making it clear, really, that Ukraine can't win the war. And if we want a peace deal, we're going to have to give Russia everything they want. So what does Trump have to do? Well, in Europe, we have to raise sanctions big time, because Putin's not going to come to the table unless you give him a reason to. So Trump and Europe are going to do that. And here's one move that's going to hurt. Trump imposes additional 25% tariff on India tied to Russian oil purchases. So this isn't just against India. This is against Russia. The Trump administration on Wednesday imposed an additional 25% tariff on Indian imports, pushing some duties as high as 50% as of Wednesday, U.S. Customs and Border Protection confirmed. The move has been reframed as retaliation for India's surging imports of discount Russian crude. What India is doing, because they're not dumb, they're buying oil from Russia, who needs to sell it, and they're selling it at a discount rate. And then India's reselling it to Western countries and pocketing the profits. Trump's going, no mas. We're going to shut off the spigot. If India can't buy this oil from Russia, it's going to make Putin have to change, will really come to the table. So the government, a foreign minister from India ripped the U.S. for targeting New Delhi over Russian oil while giving China and Europe a pass. Both sides have blamed 5 rounds of failed trade talks on misjudgments and missing signals. So he's right. You're going to cut us off from Russian oil, but Europe's still buying it. Well, that's changing. There is some effort in Russia now, and Trump signed a deal to take liquefied natural gas and to import more oil from the United States. So that's what's happening. It's important, okay? This is another international thing that has to do with tariffs. U.S. tariff exemption for low-cost imports has ended. The transition constitutes a drastic change for international shippers, online retailers, and consumers. This affects you. This affects your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. On August 29th, the United States ended a trade policy that facilitated the shipment of low-value goods in the country for years. Politicians on both sides of the aisle support the move, while the rapid transition constitutes a massive change of business for international shippers. On midnight on Friday, the United States took an existing policy blocking the so-called de minimis exemption on goods shipped from China and Hong Kong and expanded it to cover the entire world. The move was ordered by President Trump on July 30th. The President Trump order stated that the exemption has been fueling drug trafficking and unfair trade practices that hurt American businesses. In a press call on August 28th, Peter Navarro, a senior Trump counselor for trade and manufacturing, said the move is ending a loophole that will save thousands of American lives by restricting the flow of narcotics and other dangerous and prohibited items. According to Navarro, the policy change will add up to $10 billion a year in tax revenue to our Treasury, create thousands of jobs, and defend against billions of dollars more lost to counterfeiting, privacy, and intellectual property theft. Now, what is this? Okay, the history of de minimis. The de minimis exemption was originally authorized by Congress in 1930. Under Section 321 of the Tariff Act, the United States allowed certain goods to move into the country without any fee or tariff. The policy was drafted to avoid wasting public resources to collect a trifling amount of revenue, meaning that this was saying if whatever you're shipping is only worth like under $200, we're not going to bother to collect 24 cents or 50 cents in taxes. It's not worth the effort, okay? But in 2016, the minimus threshold was raised to $800 from $200. That increase, according to data collected by Customs and Border Patrol, enabled a significant increase in the number of packages that flowed across the border. Now get this, between 2015 and 2024, the number of packages falling under the exemption rose to 1.36 billion from 134 million. Okay, so all this stuff you get from Amazon, that's from China, you get from Walmart, that comes from China, that was going through with no tariffs. Through June 30th, Customs and Border Patrol tracked 309 million packages this fiscal year, nearly twice as much as 2020-24. And so Navarro says that this huge number of small packages pose two risks for Americans. First, the minimal screening makes it easier for contraband to enter the country. He says fentanyl and other drugs, along with counterfeit goods and dangerous items, are often smuggled in the country through de minimis. Second, it hurts domestic retailers because you can ship in these goods from all over the world much cheaper than they can be made here. That's going to affect you, okay? Just know about it. It's just something I thought I should point out. This I laughed about, but yeah, this is the way the world works. Denmark summons U.S. diplomat over alleged covert influence operation in Greenland. Trump wants Greenland. We are talking about the Western, the Monroe Document, North America, South America, defending that. Trump has made it clear Greenland is critical because of its proximity to the Arctic. Only like 40,000 people live in this giant continent, or I guess it's a continent or country at least, okay? And Denmark rules over it, but doesn't do anything with it. So what's going on here? Denmark has summoned the top U.S. diplomat in the country over reports that American citizens with alleged links to President Trump have been conducting covert influence operations in Greenland. Denmark's foreign minister said on Wednesday that there were foreign actors attempting to influence the future of Greenland and that all such efforts were unacceptable. He summoned Mark Stroh, the charge of affairs at the U.S. Embassy in Copenhagen, and its most senior diplomat in Denmark at present for a meeting at the foreign ministry. A White House official said late on Wednesday, "We think the Danes need to calm down." Denmark has been shaken by Trump's repeated suggestions that the U.S. wants to take control of the vast Arctic island, a semi-autonomous part of the Kingdom of Denmark, from Copenhagen, and his refusal to rule out using force to do so. Greenland's going to become a U.S. territory. Mark my words. It's going to happen because it needs to happen, and Denmark will get a bunch of money, and the people living there will get a bunch of money, and we will get a bunch of really important rare earth minerals and mining rights and military bases, okay? And there'll be also a lot of AI data centers there because it will be a lot easier to keep them cool, and you can create the energy right there. Mark my words. Greenland's going to be part of the United States. Okay, this was a follow-up because last week the story of, Trump on his retribution tour, they raided John Bolton's house out of revenge because he just said something bad about Trump, and his tariffs and his Iran attack and so on and so forth. Horse hockey. Here's the truth. John Bolton transmitted classified emails over private server, and then they were intercepted by hostile foreign country spy services. Okay? All of a sudden, all the lefties who were, what an outrage, Donald Trump is just going to raid your home. Devin Nunes says, masked men are coming for you. Not if you don't commit crimes, not if you're not a spy, not if you're not stealing classified documents, okay? And guess what? He was. Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, transmitted classified emails over a private server system, and they were intercepted by a hostile foreign country spy service, according to a leak to the New York Times. Yeah, well, that's suspect already. As reported last week, John Bolton's reporting an investigation for violating the Espionage Act. The investigation into whether John Bolton mishandled classified information is trying to determine if he violated certain sections of the Espionage Act, which makes it a crime to illegally retain or transmit national defense information, according to people familiar with the matter. Okay? It looks like John Bolton's going to jail. And that's a good message because lots of other people need to go to jail the same way. Okay? It wasn't retribution. The guy has stolen classified materials and he let our enemies get them. Oh, his own server, foreign enemies. Hillary Clinton do that? Did Hillary Clinton have a server? Yeah. Let's hope something gets done about that as well, right? Okay. This was, again, just to show you why we do what we do, how it wins. It's all coming together, okay? We talked about what Trump does. It's cause and effect. Facing impending crisis, California lawmakers pivot on fossil fuels. As refineries leave the Golden State, legislators consider a plan to bridge the gap between climate goals and reality. Los Angeles, California legislators on August 20 considered a plan to dramatically loosen restrictions on drilling and refining oil in the state as it scrambles to reconcile ambitious climate goals with the sobering reality of continuing demand for conventional transport fuels. The plan comes at the urging of Governor Gavin Newsom, a major shift from his hard-line decarbonization stance that would have seemed unlikely a year ago. Okay? Citing rapid changes in the transportation fuel sector and the sudden exits of several refineries, the Democratic governor in April asked state agencies to work with refiners to stave off the impending crisis as California faces mismatched supply and demand during a critical phase in transition to carbon neutrality. The Phillips 66 refinery in Los Angeles announced in October 24 that it would close by the end of this year, and Valero announced the closure of the Northern California refinery by the end of 2026. 6 refineries has closed since 2028, with 2 converting to renewable diesel. Okay? Operators have cited high operating costs and punishing state regulations as reasons for leaving. Now he's begging for them to come back because guess what? California has like enormous amounts of oil and they don't use it to save the citizens money because they're spending their time promoting the communist climate hoax, right? The commie climate hoax that fossil fuels are killing the people and children and the world's going to end in 12 years if you don't shut them all down. Yeah, that would really help China, who's building a coal-fired power plant every week. Every week. Yeah. And the stupid people like Gavin Newsom and the gullible people and the corrupt people who take the money, like Nancy Pelosi, right? Yeah, they're doing this, the bidding of China. But Trump's stopping them, and it's working. This was interesting. Trump signs executive order banning flag burning, warns those who desecrate the flag will get 1 year in jail. In a move to restore national respect, President Donald Trump signed an executive order mandating a 1-year jail sentence for anyone convicted of burning the American flag. If you burn the flag, you get 1 year in jail, no early exits, no nothing, Trump declared. And you will see flag burning stop immediately. For millions of Americans who watch with disgust as radicals defile the symbol of their country with impunity, this is more than policy, it's long overdue justice. On Monday, Trump signed a slew of executive orders, including one that mandated 1 year in jail for protesters who burn the flag. But he also said that anyone that's from who's a foreign national who burns the flag can be deported. Okay? Now, Supreme Court said, I forget when, Scalia actually said that burning a flag was free speech. I disagree, because when they burn the flag, they're not just burning the flag. It's always at a protest where they're demanding the overthrow of the United States, where they are ginning up violence, right? They do it when Antifa and BLM are burning down our cities. So it's, to me, yelling fire in a crowded theater was ruled not to be free speech because it endangered people's lives. I believe burning an American flag is the same thing. And so maybe the law needs to be changed that says what the context is. If you want to just stand there and burn a flag and not say anything, maybe that's free speech. But if you do it to incite a riot, to promote the overthrow of our government, that's called sedition. They should be charged. You can write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org and argue this point, because there are people who came out right away and say, we're not for that. We're for free speech. No, I'm for America. Free speech has limits. they're in the law. Can't yell fire in a crowded theater. That's been shown to be the law. I think this fits under that. Write to me if you disagree. This, I don't think you'll disagree with. Trump calls for ABC and NBC licenses to be revoked. Fake news is a threat. Hear, hear, Mr. President. We've been saying that all along. Trump said the network's reporting was overwhelmingly negative, despite what he described as the greatest 8 months in presidential history. Despite a very high popularity, and according to many, among the greatest 8 months in presidential history, ABC and NBC News fake news, two of the worst and most biased networks in history, gave me 97% bad stories. If that is the case, they are simply an arm of the Democratic Party and should, according to many, have their licenses revoked. Interesting that he left off CBS, who just paid him, $16 million settlement? That was interesting. And I don't like the way that he couched this. The fact that he, quote unquote, gave me 97% bad stories. That's not the point. The point is there's a difference between the media and the press. Freedom of the press says who, what, when, where, why. It doesn't include opinion. The media is opinion. They should not have access to the public airways to promote propaganda. We literally are giving the communist Chinese the right to spew anti-American nonsense into your house through your TV unabated. That's stupid. I think they should lose their license. But not because they're not giving positive coverage to Trump. It's because they're giving opinion and not factual information. I think we need to fix this. I think it was good that he called this out, and you should kind of put the bug in people's ears that maybe that's a good idea. This is definitely a good idea. This is something I have called for a long time. Trump calls for RICO charges against George Soros and son Alex. Okay? In a post on Truth Social, President Donald Trump accused George Soros and his son Alex of financially supporting violent protests across the United States, calling for them to be prosecuted under the Racketeering Influence and Corruption Act. Trump wrote, George Soros and his wonderfully radical leftist son should be charged with RICO because of their support of violent protests and much more all throughout the United States of America. We are not going to allow this lunatic to rip apart America anymore, never give it so much as a chance to breathe and to be free. According to the Department of Justice, the federal RICO statutes established in 1970 aims to eliminate organized crime infiltration into legitimate organizations. It is broad enough to address illegal activities impacting interstate or foreign commerce. Notably, Soros' Open Society Foundation have financially supported groups involved in contentious protests and rallies, including one advocating for an accused MS-13 gang member. Soros' network has provided millions in funding to organizations such as CASA and the Human Rights First, which is involved in pro-illegal immigration advocacy and lawsuits against Trump administration policies. That's not illegal, but they were also involved with the riots, the attacking of federal officers. Remember the riots in LA that Trump quickly crushed with the National Guard? They were handing out gas masks and they were putting bricks out for them to throw. Okay? That becomes the illegal part. Notably, Soros' Open Foundation Society has financially supported groups involved in contentious protests. Open Society allegedly funneled significant funds to groups linked to anti-Israel protests, including those justifying Hamas's October 7th, 2023 attack on Israel. Soros foundations have reported funneled over $15 million to groups behind anti-Israeli protests since 2016. Listen, George Soros is an international criminal. He has crushed the economies of two countries. I think it was Vietnam or Cambodia. He literally rigged the stock market to crush their economy. There are international warrants out for him. He has been funding Antifa, BLM, the radical left things that are attacking our kids. They definitely can build a RICO case against him, and they should. The question is, why hasn't this happened before? Now, interestingly, right after Trump said this story came out like the next day. Widespread demise of the Democrats continues as the party is racked by Bill Gates pulling his funding. You think he got the message about Soros? It has been fully recognized since the November election. The Democratic Party has been hobbled by more than a three-legged gelding, but things refuse to improve for their lot. Throughout this year, the party has seen its prospects withering across the board, whether it is in international operations, public approval, voting efforts, fundraising, and media outreach. And much like the conditions of the national media industry, there is no desire exhibited by them to change what is not working, and this week it became even worse. It was announced that the Bill Gates Foundation was suspending its monetary involvement with one of the primary nonprofits affiliated with the Democratic Party. The New York Times reported that without much fanfare, Gates was turning away from his longtime connection to the Democratic Party. The Gates Foundation decided in late June to halt making grants to non-profit funds administered by the consulting firm Arabella Advisors. In addition to its consulting work on behalf of nonprofits and philanthropists, Arabella also manages several dark money funds that support Democrats and the progressive movement. Arabella is a hybrid entity that not only advises nonprofits, but also operates dark money networks on behalf of Democratic Party interests. It managed to get away with this crooked dealing by funneling money through layers of groups. It's set up what is labeled the New Venture Fund, an allegedly nonpartisan outfit, which gets tax-deductible status, which donates then to the 1630 Fund. That outfit spread nearly $100 million to various PACs, which either backed Democrats or ran ads against Republicans. This campaign manages to see the Arabella's hands are clean and the donors behind the sham remain anonymous. But they didn't just back PACs and elections. They back the illegal immigration. They back bringing people to this country illegally. They help get criminals out of jail. They are funding the overthrow of our country. Bill Gates isn't a billionaire for no reason. He got the message. And Trump is doing what I said to all of you years ago when you said, Tom, how can we ever win? How can we ever win? The left is so strong. They control the government, media, medicine, sports, entertainment. They control education, all our institutions. We can't defeat them. And I said to you, it's easy. They're doing it with our money. If we just stop them from stealing our tax dollars and using them to hurt us, they'll crumble. They are crumbling because Trump got the message and is doing it. As this podcast has demonstrated, Tulsi Gabbard, Kristi Noem, RFK, everybody is doing it. And they can't survive. They can't survive without stealing your money. It's long past time that was stopped. This was fun. Good news. Pulitzer board can't delay Trump's lawsuit, Florida Supreme Court says. Many of you recall that the Pulitzer Prize was given to the New York Times and a bunch of other lefties for their excellent coverage of the Russia scandal, which was phony. It was phony. And they gave him a Pulitzer Prize, and they haven't rescinded it, and those people haven't given it back. The Florida Supreme Court ruled against the Pulitzer Prize Board on Tuesday in a last-ditch effort to delay President Donald Trump's defamation lawsuit against the organization until after he leaves the White House. In a ruling joined by 5 of the 7 justices, the court rejected the board's request to review on an appeals court decision that said Trump can proceed. Trump sued the board in 2020 over awards that journalism gave the journalism gave the New York Times and the Washington Post in 2018 for stories that promoted the debunked Russiagate narrative. Trump alleged the board rewarded the newspapers for lying to the American public. This caps a string of legal losses for the 19-member board in its attempt to either end or delay the Trump lawsuit. Should the case proceed to the trial phase, it could unveil unflattering details about the Pulitzer Committee's award process, a system that the prestigious journalism body has gone to great lengths to keep under wraps. Yes, show me the emails, show me the text messages that were shared back and forth about how the Pulitzer board was used to defeat Trump and overthrow our government. Let's get that out in the open. Keep fighting them. across the board never stop. Here's another case. House Republicans launch probe into Wikipedia. Wikipedia. I love this. Let's see here. Republicans on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee have initiated an investigation into accusations of organized efforts to inject bias into Wikipedia entries and the organization's response to those alleged actions. Wikipedia has long served as a key component in big tech's censorship and bias machine. The Hill reports that in a move to address concerns about the manipulation of information on a site that holds major influence in everything from Google searches to training AI, House Republicans have opened a probe into claims of bias at Wikipedia. It's spearheaded by Nancy Mason and James Comer. They seek to uncover the extent of the organized efforts to inject bias into Wikipedia entities. On Wednesday, Comer may send an informal request to the CEO of Wikipedia Foundation. They requested, information about how they manage their website, who gets to post things. The panel is requesting documents and communication related to Wikipedia's volunteer editors who have violated the platform's policies, as well as all information about the Wikipedia Foundation's efforts to prevent intentional, organized attempts to inject bias into sensitive or political topics. The lawmaker said reports highlighting coordinated campaigns to manipulate content related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the pro-Russian actors pushing pro-Kremlin and anti-Ukrainian messaging on Wikipedia. The potential impact of such bias extends beyond the platform itself, as well as information on Wikipedia can influence how AI chatbots are trained, as well as featuring prominently in Google searches. It has been completely controlled by the left for 20 years. The founder of Wikipedia says it's a joke. Anyone who uses Wikipedia as a legitimate source of information is a fool. Jordan Peterson used to believe that Wikipedia was fair. When Tom Zawistowski started out in the Tea Party movement, they immediately changed my profile to make me look as bad as possible. They do that with every single Republican. It's a joke. They need to be sued out of business, okay? And I'm glad this investigation is going on. Kudos to you guys. Now, a few more stories. We'll wrap up the podcast. Redistricting, okay? Gavin Newsom wants to be tough guy. We'll show you. We're going to fight like hell. Yeah? Okay. Missouri governor calls special session to redraw congressional map. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe announced on August 29th that he was calling state lawmakers back to the Capitol for a special session tasked with redrawing the congressional district lines ahead of the 2026 election. His announcement came just hours after fellow Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott signed into law Texas' new congressional voting map, setting the stage for the GOP to gain 5 more House seats in the 2026 election there. And it comes right after Newsom had his press conference and filed the documents to put on the ballot November 4th for a referendum in California to take 9 seats away from Republicans in California and make it even more jerry-rigged. But we said they don't have enough seats to win. 5 from Texas, 1 from Missouri. Oh, what do we have here from Benny Johnson? Here's a little story from Benny Johnson. Breaking news, Florida Republicans plan on adding 4 new Republican congressional seats. High-level sources within Florida state government tell me the legislature is moving forward with 2026 midterm redistricting. The current plan will redraw 4 congressional seats in Florida. So let's see, 5 in Texas, 1 in Missouri, 4 in Florida. That ends up to be 10 to Gavin's 9. Oh, by the way, for all of you in Ohio, we have many Ohio watchers, because that's where we started. We're in Akron, Ohio. That's where we're based. Yeah, I just got confirmation on Monday that we are definitely going to redistrict not 2 seats in Ohio, but 3. We're going to redistrict the seat in District 1 in Cincinnati and redraw it like when Babbitt originally ran to get some of the Republicans from the rural counties as part of that so we can win 3 seats in Ohio. Gee, that's 13 to Gavin's 10 or 9. Jeez, that's 8 more votes in the House than we had before. And that's before Trump starts to go into these cities and clean up the crime and people start electing Republicans in those cities. Yeah. Have a nice day, Gavin. You lose. And we're going to stop them. They're not even going to get to 9. We're going to stop them in that November election. We're going to win that because people know that they're corrupt as hell and they're sick of it. They don't want Gavin Newsom, even in California. This was another story. You got to keep on top of this. So ICE deportations near 200,000 on task 300,000 by the end of the year. New data reveals U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has reported nearly 200,000 individuals so far, and that they think they'll get to 300 to 350,000 by the end of the year. This comes, with self-deportations. On top of that, we're getting close to 2 million this year, which we reported, was the best ever. And we're going to have an out migration in this year because we voted for Trump to get these people out, and he is. Okay, so this is good news. Now, many of you are writing to me about the story about the judge ruled that Alligator Alcatraz has to shut down because they violated environmental rules, and I understand that's going to happen. It's a nothing burger, kids. It means nothing. They're just going to put them somewhere else. They're not going to stop for 1 second deporting people, because we know that the future of our country depends on that. And you're going to see in a few minutes when I talk about this video I need you to watch why that's true. But this story popped up this morning on my X feed. And if you don't follow me on X, please do. Tom ZWTBC. We're on Gab. We're on Getter. We're on MeWe. We're on Facebook. We're on TikTok. We're on Instagram. We're on Rumble. We're on Roku TV. We're on our website at wethepeopleconvention.org. Share those things. Follow us. But, this story popped out. This is Scott Turner, who's the head of HUD. He was on last night, and he said, D.C. Housing Authority is on notice. We are demanding all citizenship information for residents. We're telling the same to the more than 3,000 public housing authorities across the country. The taxpayer-funded vacation is over. He is saying to the D.C. housing, HUD, that gets HUD funding, we want the names of every person that's living in a HUD-funded apartment in the city of D.C. We want how many people are in there. We want their ages. We want their countries of origin. We want their citizenship status. If they are illegals, out. And he's sending that to the 3,000 other agencies across the United States in your community. How do you think that's going to affect self-deportation numbers, kids? We ain't playing around. Shut off the money and you give them the incentive to do what we want them to do. Get the hell out. Awesome. You guys all know I'm beating this drum as hard as any drum I've ever beat. Pell Grants now available for skilled trade students. This story came out this week. I was surprised. I hadn't seen this, and I thought you should know it and share it. The July 2025 budget reconciliation bill passed by Congress expands Pell Grants eligibility to skilled trade workers. The budget reconciliation bill passed basically says, before the bill passed, the main form of federal grants for students with low income, which are Pell Grants, could only be used for programs that are at least 600 clock hours and 15 weeks long, meaning that's a college semester. You could get a Pell Grant to go to college. That means that high quality short-term training programs aren't eligible. As a result, students who want to pursue those paths often receive no federal financial assistance. Workforce Pell Grants changes that. It's in the one big, beautiful bill. It opened up Pell Grants to students enrolling in short-term career-focused programs. These could be in healthcare, IT, skilled trades, or other growing fields where employees need trained talent now and where students can often earn a credential in weeks, not years. I've said to you, share this story with people, but more importantly, keep on pushing the skilled trades. We have to recruit 10 million new skilled workers in the trades, 3%, okay? We've got to do it. You've got to keep pushing. your relatives, anyone who's underemployed, anyone who's working at Target or at any kind of retail store, who's serving at a restaurant or cooking at a restaurant, who's working in any service industry, in lawn care, whatever. Reach out to them and say, have you considered a trade? Have you considered going into the trades? Now, I got to tell you, in this next video, I'm going to spend some time with that, even though the podcast is running pretty long. I want President Trump to go on public television and do a national address and say, ladies and gentlemen, we are in a national security crisis. We must beat the communist Chinese to AI, and we must rebuild the middle class. In order to do that, we need to surge our citizens into the trades so they can learn HVAC, electrical, plumbing, carpentry, concrete work, mining, whatever, to build the grid and the electricity we need for AI, to build the AI data centers, then to build all the auto plants and the pharmaceutical plants and the other industries that are coming here because of our tariffs. So why? So we can have a powerful middle class, which you must have to have any kind of republic or any kind of a society that you want to live in. I want President Trump to do that. But for some reason, they don't want to ask us to participate in saving our country. I'm asking you, you're doing it voluntarily. I'm telling you, if Trump did that, we would recruit 10 million people in a week. In a week. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know why he won't do it. I'll try to message him. You can try to message him. But this is that serious. And I'm going to now tell you about this video. I've been down on Tucker Carlson a lot lately because he went a little nuts. But he did this interview with this guy I never heard of, Aaron McIntyre, who is apparently a Blaze reporter, okay? But he's only been with them for like 3 years. He was teaching like high school history or math or something 3 years ago. Really intelligent guy who really has gone and researched American history. And he and Tucker have this discussion about where are we and where we're going. And where we are is we aren't a republic and we aren't a democracy. We're an empire. And then he goes into the history of empire, from the Byzantine Empire, the Roman Empire, and basically where we are right now is where they were when they fell. And if we're going to save our country, if we're going to save individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, we have to do some really serious things. But before we can do those things, before you can promote those things and advocate for them, before you can get on board, you got to watch this whole video and understand what history tells us. Because the debt we have, the destruction of the middle class, the division within us has all been seen before. And it doesn't end well. It ends if you don't address it. If we don't, like I talked to you about the video that's on our video, and you can get this at wethepeopleconvention.org in the video section. Go to wethepeopleconvention.org and watch this video. But there's also the Charlie Kirk video in there where he says, if we don't start addressing the concerns of our young people who can't buy a house, who can't make it with the inflation we got, if we can't stop having the oligarchs, the Musks and the Bezos and the Thiels, these guys who are ultra gazillionaires, and then the working people have nothing on Labor Day weekend. If we can't fix that, we're done. We're going to have riots in the streets. Trump is trying to address this, and he's trying to diffuse it by stopping the riots before they start, by surging the military into these blue cities where their Antifa and their illegal immigrant armies are housed, that they're going to want to turn loose this fall or before the 2026 election. But he can't just put out the fire. He's got to stop the cause of the fire. We've got to cut spending. We've got to reduce the size of government. We must empower the middle class. We must have a strong, vibrant middle class. We must have elections that matter. We have none of that. This video, you got to watch it. You have to watch it and sit down with your family and friends on Labor Day weekend and watch it. It will inform you. It will help you make more sense of what you saw in this podcast. Okay? I love you guys. We have what we have because of you. If we're not going to lose it, it's because of the actions you and I are going to take. The asks that I made you to do in this podcast. Okay? It's up to us. We're not spectators. We're participants. We're players in the game. So while I want you to enjoy your weekend, enjoy college football, enjoy the picnics and the air shows going on at Cleveland, we'll try to maybe see some of that, okay? Enjoy family and friends and love this country with all your heart. Thank God for the blue skies if you've got them, and the beautiful lakes and rivers, the golf course you're on, the Little League baseball game you're watching, whatever it is. That's what you're fighting to defend. Love your children, your brothers and sisters, your family, your community. That's what we're fighting for. That's why you watch this podcast. We will be victorious because we will not allow this country to go down. We will not. We're going to make it the golden age, but we're going to have to pay the price to do that. I think you're willing to do that. So, as I close the podcast, tell people about this podcast. Write to me at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. wethepeopleconvention.org. Info. Say, here's a story. Here's a link. I don't think burning a flag should be outlawed. Whatever it is, whatever you disagree with, whatever you agree with. If I missed a story that I should have told you guys, send it to me. Send me the link. But don't send a video link without telling me what it's about. Okay? Because it takes time to do that. And I need to make decisions. Write to us at info@wethepeopleconvention.org. But in the meantime, enjoy your Labor Day weekend. God willing, we'll be together again next week, right? Enjoy the week. Enjoy the weekend. Until next week, may God bless you and may God bless America. My name is Tom Zawistowski, and you've been listening to the We the People Convention Weekly News and Opinion Podcast. Bye now.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights, oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting